Some people have argued that if the fundamental physical constants of the universe differed even slightly from their present values, this would change the structure of the universe so radically that life as we know it could not exist. They then claim it's too unlikely for this particular combination of constants to have arisen by chance, and therefore the values of these constants must have been finely tuned to permit the existence of life. This implies some kind of fine-tuner, which is typically characterized as God. But there are a number of issues with this argument. Those who claim the universe is fine-tuned for us to exist have failed to fully consider the opposite case. What would we observe if the constants of the universe did not allow life to exist? Since this would prevent us from existing, we wouldn't observe anything, because we wouldn't exist. So long as we exist, we are always going to observe that the universe permits our existence. We'll never be able to observe anything else. Similarly, any exotic forms of life that require a different kind of universe to exist will never be able to raise the objection that this universe isn't fine-tuned to allow their existence, because they would never be able to exist in the first place. Theologians like William Lane Craig view this as an unsatisfying reply. They consider it analogous to standing in front of a 100-man firing squad to be executed and surviving when all of them somehow miss. In that situation, while you could rightly say that, of course you're still alive, otherwise you wouldn't be around to notice you're alive, this fails to address exactly why it just so happened that every bullet missed. But this objection is based on the assumption that the current constants of the universe are extremely unlikely, and that every possible permutation of their values is equally probable. And how do they know that every combination of values is equally likely to occur? After all, we only have this universe to observe. It's not as though we've reenacted several instances of the Big Bang and observed that in each new universe these constants seem to have completely random values. There is no basis for the assertion that our own universe has constants that are too unlikely to have occurred by chance. More than that, the claim that something cannot happen if it is sufficiently improbable belies a misunderstanding of how probability works. If something has a probability of 0, that would mean it will not happen. But if something has a non-zero probability, no matter how small it is, there is still a chance that it could happen. Indeed, that's the very reason an event is given a certain probability. It describes how likely it is to occur. You could take 1,000 coins, give each of them a number, and throw them in the air, and when they land, that particular pattern of heads and tails has a probability of about 1 in 10 to the power of 301, which is very unlikely, so unlikely you might say it's too unlikely to happen, and yet it happened anyway. And even if the constants of our universe were extraordinarily unlikely to occur at random, that doesn't mean they couldn't or didn't. But even if we did accept that every permutation of physical constants is equally likely, and that something could be too unlikely to occur by chance, we could just as well claim that any combination of constants is too unlikely to have occurred by chance, regardless of whether that combination allowed for the existence of life or not. Finally, if this argument is meant to demonstrate the existence of a God that's powerful enough to create a universe, tailor-made to accommodate organisms that won't even begin to exist in their most primitive forms until 10 billion years later, why would this God be limited to, as the Discovery Institute puts it, tuning radio dials? Why couldn't this God create a different kind of universe where even widely varying physical constants would still permit the existence of life? Why does it have to tune anything? Is this God bound to some higher laws that determine the precise way these constants have to be tuned for life to exist? If that's the case, who finely tuned that? This fine-tuning argument seems to assume from the outset that the universe revolves around us, that we're special enough to make an entire universe for, even when we didn't exist yet. It treats the existence of humanity as a necessity, an inevitability, rather than what it really is, a happy accident in an indifferent universe. And those who misunderstand probability badly enough that they would claim this was too unlikely to happen only manage to undermine their own point. If this universe is too unlikely, so is any universe. If this pointed to any kind of God, it would be a strangely human God, restricted to operating within a framework of predefined requirements for what makes a habitable universe, instead of simply transcending such requirements. Ultimately, this argument fails to make a compelling case for why a chance universe should be any less plausible than a designed universe, let alone one designed by the kind of God typically envisioned by those who feel the need to make this argument.